Welcome to this episode of Tax People Aren't Boring, and this time we are absolutely overjoyed and overcome to be with the inimitable, the wonderful Gina Chen, Senior Sales Engineer at Vertex. Welcome, Gina, all the way from the States.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, Gina, first question. Are tax people boring?
No.
No, elaborate.
No, not all of us. Not all of us. I mean, that's just across the board, but most of us actually are not.
No. Why do you
have to
think
be
that
a little
people
crazy
think...
to be in this industry.
Why do people think tax people are boring then? What's your view on this? We're interested to know.
I think they just think people who are number crunchers are boring, but it's I think it's a perception where we're just looking at numbers all day, and that's not what we do.
No, I mean,
some of us do, but most of us aren't.
I've never met anybody that absolutely goes and defies, that rule that tax people are boring more than you. And I know that when we'd spoken before, so just for a bit of context, the first time I met or ever saw you was when you were on a panel discussion at an event in Florida, and that was last year. Andrew was on the panel, doing his thing with two other people and yourself. The two other people who shall remain nameless were fine. They were wonderful. Andrew typically does this thing, and then you come in and you are like a rock star. It's almost like people are eating out your hand, Gina. She's so modest.
It's got that confidence.
You've definitely got the confidence. But so let's figure out who you are. What do you do, and how did you get there? Talk to us about your journey.
How did you get into tax?
Yeah.
It's actually funny because, out of school, I had no idea what I wanted to do. All my friends in high school were like, I want to be a vet. I want to be a psychologist. I want to be a digital artist, whatever, and I'm sitting here going, what am I good at? So I ended up going to UT, University of Texas Go Longhorns, and they had a really good accounting program, right? It was top one in the country. You could get your master's and your bachelor's at the same time. Like, who doesn't want to just get that done out of school, right? I was never...
Get it out of the way.
I liked school. Yeah, get it out of the way. I was like, I don't like school, but I like numbers. I'm good with numbers. English is my second language. I'm not going to be an English major.
I did not know that.
Yeah. English is my second language, and I've always been good at math. No, I actually like math. So I was like, okay, what is the fastest degree I can get out and actually get a job right away?
So marrying up your academic strengths plus your needs to get moving, and accountancy was the badger for you then. And did it was. Oh, go on.
Go ahead. No, it just happened to fall into place. I like numbers. Where I was going to school had a really good program. I could get both degrees and save money. That's what accountants like to do. So it's just like, it seemed like a good fit. Especially with UT being such a good program. But honestly, it was, what am I going to do to get out of school where I'm going to be able to get a job right? Yeah. Accounting, there's always people who need accountants. Like they always say definitely. In the US, there's two things certain in life, death and taxes, right?
Amen.
You always hear that. So that was the reason why. And it was like, okay, well, you see, I was looking around. It made sense because it was a good program, ranked highly, and they let me in.
so that obviously, I mean, who doesn't like to be sort of let through the door? That's the first barrier overcome. How did that lead through to your first career opportunity?
So that accounting program actually had an internship program for about 6 months, right? So part of your school year as well as your summer, there are a lot of interns. So I interned at Walt Disney because I always wanted to go to California. And they had a very good program with our school where literally you are interning there for 6 months, right? So they pay for like a housing and a car. Wow. And when we get there, we're basically your grunts, right? Like all the people that was during their tax season, I got to see how big a tax return could actually get from an income tax perspective. You can imagine how huge their returns are, right? But I got lucky, and think about this is back in the actually it was the late 90s. Late 90s, okay? I'm dating myself here. But I was tasked with doing their sales and use tax returns. Surprisingly enough, all right?
Yeah.
So I got thrown into that, and back in the day, it was literally looking up what they sold on microfiche.
Oh my god.
For those of you on microfiche, okay? So for those of you who are listening who are not young enough to know what microfiche is, It basically is they take documents and shrink them down onto this little film, and then you use a big projector and you stick the film in there, and you've got to search through this
Hang on a minute.
huge.
We need to also explain what film is and what a projector is.
Yeah,
I
I was
think.
gonna say.
Yeah.
Maybe get a picture, put it in the
Yeah.
podcast of a picture of a microfiche
do you know what it is?
machine,
You know,
right?
you see it in movies all the time where somebody needs to go and research newspapers from years gone
Yeah.
by,
Yeah.
and the only way to do it is
Yes,
to get on
yes.
the microfiche.
Exactly. So it was doing returns, pulling data off microfiche.
Wow.
And then I learned that process. And then the next summer, I interned doing sales tax returns again at another small company. And then I got hired by the now defunct Arthur Andersen. And my first job out of school was, well, not including all my, all the other jobs people have. I worked at a pizza place, worked at a Kinko's, etc. But my first job out of school was with Arthur Andersen. And because I had that limited amount of sales tax background, they decided to put me into the oil and gas motor fuel returns group. So I was outsourced to Pennsville Quaker State and did all of their motor fuel returns for, I was assigned a couple states, but starting off with Louisiana, that's always a fun one. So that's how I started in my career. So that was in Houston. And then after that, I transferred to New York after about a year or so, and actually in their state and local tax group. And that's kind of how I became a full-time sales and use tax person. It just kind of trickled down from Disney to that.
Yeah, so you've been in tax pretty much, out of the gates and then stayed in. That's interesting because actually, a lot of the people that we've interviewed on the podcast, that they didn't come from a tax background at all. They've sort of almost been.
Gina did accountancy, and
Yeah, but straight the first job. I mean, I think there's not necessarily that many programs that just focus on tax. I know in the Netherlands, for example, a lot of the universities they actually do degrees, but you try and find a tax degree or something in other countries, it's actually quite rare. And it pretty much sounds like you're a press gang straight out of college into the tax department.
I call myself lucky because it kind of chose me.
Yeah.
Honestly, and I like it. And going through school, there were different tracks, right? Like it was an accounting program, and then you could get your master's in whatever, like a management accounting or financial accounting or tax. Yeah. So, it just kind of worked out that way.
But you're saying then, it's a serendipitous thing, it chose you. So are you saying then that you like being in tax?
I do. I do. And I'm one of those people where I have throughout my career, think, is there anything else I'd want to do? I actually even quit my job for 3 months way back early on and was like, took 3 months to figure out, is this really what I want to do? Do I want to go and start in another career, start off fresh, and start off making no money? And then I decided, I was like, you know what? I really do like my job, right? I know it. I think it's exciting. I know that sounds really weird, but there's just always so many nuances and new stuff that comes on. And what I do actually, I feel like relates to life, right? In terms of I can see what I'm doing affect life. Meaning I can go to a store and buy something and I'm a sales tax geek, right? I'm gonna look at the invoice. I'm like, is this right? I wonder what they're using. Or we get a prospect that comes in and I'm like, okay, I love this store or I love shopping here. There's things that just kind of tie it back to your daily lives. And I feel like with the other types of taxes, you can't translate that
because it's tangible, right? Yeah, because even seeing it on a receipt.
It's business taxes versus personal taxes, right? It is a very different dynamic. Sales tax kind of affects everything you do in life, right? So right. It's almost the most relatable in my mind. Because when you describe to people what you do, they're like, if I told them I did income tax returns for businesses, they're going to be like, ugh, yeah, right? But if I tell them, whenever you buy something on Amazon, when you get tax calculation, that's what I do. They're like, oh, it's like, it's a lot more relatable to people because they have to pay it, they see it daily, it affects everybody's lives, right? Yeah. That's kind of what I like about it. And that sounds geeky, but that's what I like.
I think what's interesting as well, obviously you're the other side of the pond to us. But when people are talking about, tax, I'm like, oh yeah, but your business, it's just going to be like, say, 20% tax. You don't have to really worry about it. But we work with clients that have really complex drop shipments. They're doing installations. There could be like, it's just one country with like 40 different tax rates when actually there's only really sort of one. But we need all of that to capture all the information. And people you still see their eyes glaze over. They're still not interested. But
That's not me.
but the point is
Pretty
that there is so much, that what goes into it, to make sure that tax rate is
Even I
calculated
find
correctly.
it fascinating now, and I never thought I'd be that person because hello, I'm
See?
in marketing, and now I find tax interesting.
Yeah. Is that just because you spend so much time with me and I'm...
Absolutely not. No.
You're not boring, Andrew. That's why. See, not tax people are not boring.
No. Well, actually, also our skit was going to be tax people aren't boring, but Andrew is. No, we won't do that. We won't do that, Gina. So let's go back. So you were doing all of this stuff, and how did that then come to you being at Vertex and doing sales? Because that's from one side of the equation to the other. Then.
I know. I felt like I was maybe born to be a salesperson. No. Anyways, that's not that interesting. But basically, I did accounting, jumped a couple firms, right? I probably would have stayed at Anderson my whole career, I'll be honest with you, because it was a great place to work. I'm going to a party this weekend with all of my old coworkers from Anderson.
Oh.
So, it was one of those things where it's kind of hard.
So did you say co-workers from Anderson or Enron? I didn't... What?
Anderson.
Oh, okay.
Anderson. New York office, not a Houston office. Yeah, it's just, it was fun, like I said, but once you've kind of been in a good atmosphere and you jump around a little bit, you're kind of looking for that same camaraderie, right?
Yeah.
So after public accounting, one of the places I was working at, they wanted me to move to San Francisco, and then another opportunity came up with a small tax engine startup. So I knew a coworker who worked at the same firm as me. She had over there, and turns out they were like 15 minutes from my home. They were just starting out building a sales tax engine, and it was a good fit. So I went over there, helped them build their engine, helped them with. So I went from doing consulting to literally doing customer onboarding, customer support, and billing. Because when you're at a small place, you guys know, when you're starting up,
you wear many hats, Gina.
Wear a million hats, right? So I feel like that was really great because I was basically throwing feet to the fire in terms of what a tax engine does, what a tax engine needs to do. Because when you have to literally map every square on a tax return and tell the programmer what needs to go into that box, you learn the returns pretty well too.
Yeah.
So I've had from beginning to end that whole process of, what a customer is looking for to getting them implemented to being customer support and billing. So it's like the whole entire customer life cycle, right? That company got acquired by Walter Sklar.
Uh-huh.
And then a couple of years later, one of the reps I worked at there went over to where I am now and reached out. And I always heard about Vertex in my career, and I was like, if they ever come calling, I'm definitely give it a serious conversation, right? Well, they came calling, and here I am. And I haven't been. This has been the happiest place or the best place I've worked at since Arthur Andersen, and I can say that.
Yeah.
Love the people here. They're great with their employees. I always joke with people, but it's not really a joke. I'm probably going to end up retiring here, right? Unless something happens. So again, we have so many people here who are lifers. I hear 27, 30 years so often. It's like, I'm going to be here I'm here 7 years. I'm still a newbie.
No, I think that's really important. I mean, we have quite a few people, Innovate Tax has not been around for as long, and we have loads of people. I think someone's just celebrated 10 years just recently. So,
Wow.
and I think it's really important that if you find a really good job, the grass isn't always greener. But I think if you're in that situation where you're looking, you probably aren't maybe the right fit for that company. I think when you find a good company, staying with it is a great thing because, like you say, there's people there. It's the culture, and I think a lot of people, and I think I mentioned this before in another podcast, but a lot of people will try and fit in to the place they're working rather than finding a job where they fit in already. And I think part of that then is if you are in a company that for a long time, what do you do to keep learning, keep developing? Do you keep yourself busy?
That's a stellar question, actually. Yeah, because I'm interested, and I know part of the answer because I know you're doing a bit of studying right now, aren't you?
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I completely agree on what you said, Andrew. Finding a place that accepts you for who you are versus trying to fit into a mold. And I think that's what's great about here. I'm not, again, not plugging, but just in general, like I'm a little unique, right? But I think when a company can actually um, appreciate your strengths and your differences is great, right? And the grass is greener, like you said. I am definitely one of those where I actually left for 2 months because this big shiny job, someone reached out, big shiny job, um, 2 months I was gone. And I was like, okay, no, I don't care how much money you want to throw at me or how many like different titles and whatnot. When you get to a certain point in your life in your career, all of that BS is not worth it,
Yeah.
right? I don't care how much money it is. You want a good quality of life. You want a job you like. You want employees that you like,
Yeah.
or employee,
I think
coworkers that you
ambition
like.
changes.
So
Ambition doesn't always now have to mean earn more money. It doesn't have to mean move up
no,
a rung.
it doesn't.
Ambition can be happy. That's my ambition, to be comfortable what I'm doing and be the best
Yes,
at it.
it's more important like your daily. It's how happy you are daily versus am I gonna get this huge award? It's just a balanced life, work life balance. And I think when you get older, that changes, right? In
Yeah.
terms of what you're looking for, you know. But on the other note, like I said, the whole career path thing, um, out of school, I I did an accounting degree and whatnot, and I kind of knew at that point in time I wanted to get into sales tax, right? So CPA exam is the most common out of an accounting program. Um, didn't didn't really After 5 years of school, I wasn't the best at studying. I already mentioned that before. Uh, Passed one or two parts, but never would never look back, right? And to this day, my mom still asks me, "Are you ever going to get your CPA exam?" I'm like, "Mom, I've been doing this for how long, and you still want me to get credentialed?" And of course, the layman don't understand what I do has nothing to do with a CPA.
Right.
Like that's audit or that's so and then also just credentialing yourself. I feel like after a while, if you've been in this career, it's like, how do you prove that you actually know what you're talking about?
So
So,
what is that? Is that an imposter syndrome thing, or is that just for your own
oh,
kind of...
absolutely. And it's funny because I didn't even know what imposter syndrome meant until like 2 years ago, and I was like, I always thought it was just, people faking it, but it's the complete opposite. It's people who know what they're doing, but they feel like they're faking it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah.
really difficult. I don't think it was until my 40s that I actually felt like I knew what I was talking about.
Wow.
Even though I've been doing it for 20 something years, it was really comfortable and like, okay, I actually do know what I'm saying. People, what I know is of a value. And that takes a while to get there. But credentialing yourself, I think if there is the option to do so in your career, does not hurt. Right. And that's where we were talking about, Carl, where I decided to finally go get my credential for sales tax. So I'm going in. There's a program called Institute of Professionals in Taxation, IPT.
Yeah.
You'll hear it, right? IPT. They have what's called a CMI certified. I always forget that acronym. Anyways, there's a certification for sales tax professionals. So there's a couple of classes you have to take, and then there's an exam. Part of it's oral, part of it's written to get your credential for being a sales tax expert. So I decided to do that this year. So that's where I'm going to be in 2 weeks from now, is finishing my second school and then taking the exam in June.
So do you
But
think, I mean, I think it's amazing that you're doing it, because it's a huge commitment, obviously, to undertake whilst you've still got a full-time job. And I know that there's always going to be benefits to getting your credentials and, those additional qualifications under your belt, not least because of the knowledge that you gain from doing it. But what do you think that's going to give you in your current position? Is it going to help you, or is it literally just for your own self-satisfaction?
I think it's going to help me, because I think when you're talking to tax professionals, right? Like I was literally just on a call with a woman, a prospect, and she was a CMI.
Right.
So when you're talking to another CMI and you're like, they clearly know what they're talking about, well, why would they listen to you?
Absolutely.
Especially if they're like, well, how long have you been doing this? Well, I've been doing it 25 years, but they don't know your history unless they go look on LinkedIn. Hopefully you have a good LinkedIn profile, right? But it's something right off the bat that says, hey, I actually have been doing this for a while. I've been certified in what I'm doing, right? So it's just a little bump, I think, in your profile. Doing stuff like this, right? Going to speak at trade shows. If you have that credentialing, people at least have a little bit level a little bit higher level of trust because they know you've gone through that learning.
Yeah.
I guess.
And you're speaking the same
So-
language as they do, which always helps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think also it's the more you know, tax touches everything. Lots of different departments, right from the beginning, when materials are being bought, or right to the very end, right? And there's so many different components. So you, as a tax technologist, as you're implementing, you don't need to necessarily know. You just need to understand that there are things that you need to listen to and understand about those areas. And I think that's one of the reasons why, my background is IT. It wasn't tax, and I had to learn the tax side. And I'm like, I'm never going to go and look at the actual legislation side. I don't need to, because I'm working with people that know that. My job is to understand and know enough to ask the question so I can understand what that tax scenario is, for example, and then I can then translate that into how I'm going to make that work. And also to say, okay, it's not just about the determination of the tax rate. Does this have to be reported? How does it fit on an invoice? How are we going to maintain, the data and everything else? So I think having that, always being able to learn, always being able to do other bits and pieces, it all fits into that whole, the whole service that you can offer in terms of your skill set.
Absolutely. And I mean,
and like I said, with regards to what we do, it is two pieces, right? I didn't come from a technology background. So you're always going to have to learn one thing or another, right? But that's continue education in your career. You are never going to go into a job with in the same area of what you went to college for and know everything.
No.
You're just never going to do it.
Well, unless you become a professor.
Well, maybe.
I doubt.
Well,
A professor?
A professor, yeah, right.
Well, I certainly didn't. So originally I was going to be a French teacher. I know I think I got a D in my A level because I really wasn't very good. And then I thought, well, that's okay. I'm going to be a Spanish teacher. So I went to 3 different universities, did a year at each of them. I didn't get it because I was too busy having a good time and understanding who I was for the first time ever. But that would have been my career path. And then for the same reason that many people fall into their jobs, marketing found me. And it wasn't until later that I got my qualifications. But I certainly didn't go to school and think, I know, I'm going to be a marketer. I thought I would either be a teacher or an HR assistant.
Yeah. I think, with the tax, I think a lot of people, fall into it. But I also think, like you're saying, that you've always got to be learning. And also, I've worked with enough projects where you have someone who thinks they know everything and they're not willing.
I've met a few of those, Gina.
No, really?
But I think the point I'm trying to make here is that those people that think they know everything, they then are quite often shut down to actually listening to other options, or quite often, the number of times we have international projects, and let's just say things are set up in a very American way, and it doesn't work like that in Europe, for example.
It's the difference between confidence and arrogance.
Yeah, I think absolutely, and I think always having that, I always want to learn. There's always something I can do. Obviously, I'm very confident, that what that what I do, I'm an expert at. But I'm always listening and thinking I could be caught out. I don't want to look like an idiot. So even the way I approach things, I want to make sure that I'm doing it in a way that makes sure, I can get away with it.
I'll give you that, Andrew.
I also find people are afraid to admit they're wrong.
Yeah.
Or admit to
Andrew,
what they don't know.
Yeah.
Especially if it's a group call with other counterparts or coworkers, right? Especially like when we're doing a scoping call or talking to prospects. People are afraid to admit that they don't know what they don't know because they're worried about their job. They're worried that they did something wrong. But, it's hard to, I find that side conversations one-on-one are always better because people are more, not vulnerable, but they're more open when you talk to them instead of in a large group, right? So, and when I don't know how many tax managers or controllers or VPs of tax that tell me, I don't know sales tax. I'm an income tax person. This is just under my umbrella.
Yeah.
I don't know how many times I've heard that. It's just, it is what it is.
I think the bigger problem is that when I do work with sales tax managers and they don't even know how to do use tax, and you're like, or they're basically, shifting out all this marketing stuff, and you're like, but you bought that under an exemption certificate. You need to now do
to
the
be
use
fair,
tax.
if they did know about all of that, they wouldn't.
No, but that's
to you, would they?
Well, I think there's so many people out there that just literally they don't want to learn or grow, and actually that then means they stagnate. I
agree, but it's worse. Like Gina said, it's worse if somebody doesn't sort of declare or disclose that they don't know. Like, you know, just going along, bumbling along, pretending you know what you're talking about. It's rubbish.
The consultants is like, let me just come back to you on that one. That means they don't know what they don't know. They've got to go and ask a colleague.
It means they don't know. They've got to ask the question.
But that's good, because it means that they are, right, I'm going to go and make sure I do find out and I'll come back to you. And I think...
Yeah, you don't know,
but that's
know
okay though, right?
Know your strengths, you know. I
think that's okay though, you know. I don't know everything. I'm always going to tell them, I pretend I know everything, but I don't know everything. So for me, I feel like it's the... You don't have to know everything, but you have to know the resources of where to get the answers.
Absolutely.
I think that's the biggest thing people don't understand, right? Is you don't need to know everything. Don't be afraid to say you don't know something, but also know how to get the answers.
Yeah. I totally agree. Right, I'm gonna change tax slightly now because
now we're talking about tax.
Yeah, and who wants to talk about tax? It's so exciting. I don't want to sort of like, you know, overdose people with tax excitement. Who is your inspiration? So you've got to the place where you are today, but do you have any sources of inspiration, you know, professionally or otherwise? I mean, we should probably talk about the inspiration for the front of the facade of your house, because I think that's pretty stellar, to be honest with you. But we'll go professionally first. Do you have any sources of inspiration?
Professionally? I mean, there are people in my company that I obviously admire, right? Because they've been here and they, you know, they clearly know what they're doing. And I lean on them all the time for my own sanity checks, right? But for me, honestly, just in general, it's my mom. I know that sounds really cheesy, but not from a career perspective, but just in general. You know, I just feel like my mom raised 3 kids pretty much, not on her own, but on her own, right? And she's been, in my mind, the strongest person in our family, because she's been through so much stuff and she's finally happy with her life. So I kind of mirror that, in that I've seen all the stuff that she did wrong, or, you know, that she's told me she's done wrong, and try to avoid those, right? I know that sounds silly, but
no, because I think that's how you get your resilience, right?
Yeah, it's one of those where, you know what, if things happen, I know at least I am strong enough to figure out how to resolve it, right? It's a problem solving task. It's some people, they're faced with a problem, they kind of freeze up, right? I'm not one of those, and I think I get that from my mom. It's just suck it up and deal with it and figure it out.
Shout out to Gina's mum. What's her name?
Joy.
Hi, Joy. You're an inspiration.
That's her English name.
You're an inspiration.
I don't tell my mom that long enough, but I probably
should. On that point, actually, I think obviously we are a little bit older than a lot of people that may be listening to this podcast, people getting attacked. And one of the things I've been talking to a lot of people recently is the quality of the workforce coming in now, with all of their demands, all of their expectations, you know, that they don't actually suck it up and get on with stuff. It's all like, well, I just need an excuse to take more time off, or to go and have a lie down because
Careful, Andrew.
I know, but what are you seeing, like, in terms of people coming into the workforce, you know, because you've been, you know, in the same company for a long time. Is there a shift? You know, are the people coming in different? You know, the younger guys coming into the project,
different expectation, or even different skills. Like, we know that technology in tax is more of a thing these days, right? But what are the differences with the new cohort?
You know, I think a lot of them are lacking a little confidence in their skills, in themselves. You know, I wish the younger generation coming in understands that it's okay to make mistakes. Nobody's perfect. It's okay to not know everything, and it's okay to ask for help. And it's also most likely you're not going to get rewarded and recognized for every little thing that you do. Movement and promotion is earned. It's not just a time thing. Okay, if you've been there a year, does not mean that every year you should get promoted. That's just not how the world works. So I think that's part of the
even
challenge.
Even Innovate Tax as a small company, we're now having to put in the sort of the levels, each, you know, job role in different departments, and then the levels that people have to achieve, so that people can't just say, I've been here 5 years, therefore I should be a director. No, you can't even do this yet. You need to, how do we help you get to that point, right?
But I think more than anything, it's expectation setting, isn't it? Because everybody knows then what they have to strive towards. But I think, you know, there is generally a lack of confidence in sort of younger people, which you would expect maybe socially, but not maybe professionally, considering, you know,
I think
social
it's a little of both.
Yeah.
I think it's a little of both because especially in our spaces where we're talking to people a lot, right? A lot of that young, I feel like they're even afraid to pick up the phone. They'd rather email someone 100 times to resolve an issue versus just picking up the phone and be like, hey, let's just talk about this, because that's usually a lot better conversation and you get more information than trading 1,000 emails.
100%.
Right?
Yeah, I think my daughter recently hooked up with a guy, linked with the guy, dated the guy, broke up with the guy without ever meeting him, all on, you know, just on text messages or WhatsApp or Snapchat or whatever it is they use now.
I know, it's crazy, right? It's crazy. My niece was the same way. She was chatting with some guy in New York and they've never met, and I'm like, but you know what? I met my first boyfriend, which is kind of funny, on what was it back in the day, AOL, when we first had computers.
Yeah.
Remember the dial-up sound that it's like an adrenaline little adrenaline spike when you hear that dial-up sound.
I still remember the little icon for AOL Instant Message was that little man, wasn't it? Yeah, I remember the yellow,
with the spinning, the little 3 boxes, right? You know what I'm talking about. It's just, you know, different ways to connect. You know, I met my first boyfriend in high school. We met on a web forum for music. And then turns out my sister was friends with one of the guys who dated his sister. So it wasn't like, you know, just on the web. There was a personal connection. We knew people who knew people, but that's, you know, it's just another step, I feel like. And kids nowadays, like I said, they don't want to learn how to drive. They want people to drive them. That's what
I want people to drive me everywhere, Gina.
I mean, yeah, but like, I am a lot more. When I turned 15, I got my permit. The day I turned 16, I got my license. Right? My niece is already 16, and she's just dragging her feet because it's like, okay, well, there's just more fear, I think, in that younger generation of things in general.
There doesn't seem to be a rush. I mean, like, I always thought that, you know, once you've completed education, you must then get a job, you must then move out, and it has to happen within the space of a week.
That's just because your mum wanted you out.
Well, yeah, but she wasn't alone. Most mothers at that point did, but now, like, people are staying with their parents until a bit, and I know there's financial pressures there, you know, until their mid-30s. I
remember when I went to university, the first weekend home, I went into my bedroom and I'm like, it's been redecorated. None of my stuff is in here. Where is it? And my mum was like, no, you've moved out. You're out.
Yeah.
She said, you can come back, but I'm not doing your washing. And that room is now a guest room. So, you know, get used to it. And I was like, all right then. So,
remember we talked about needing to get a job out of school right away? Yeah. Because my father was living in Taiwan. My parents had divorced. My mom had become a Buddhist nun at a temple. So I had to get a job.
Wow.
There was no home to go back to, right? You know, there was a house that we kept, but we were selling it. So literally, it was one of those situations where I couldn't daddle around and just get an art degree and not make any money. Like I said, there was all of this. What drove me to get an accounting degree? Like, I would have loved to go to fashion school and become a fashion buyer. Like, who wouldn't want to do that? Well, maybe not everybody, but I would love to do that. But it was, what can I do where I know I'm going to be secure financially when I get out of school? But I think it also a lot has to do with your family background, right? And there's not to knock people who grew up with parents who were able to fully support them through college and all that. Great, I'm happy for them, but I didn't have that option.
No, right? I mean, so and necessity is the mother of invention. So if you have to do something, you end up doing it.
Yeah, and I think what's important as well for you is, like, even though you had that mindset, I've got to go and get a job, do the accounting, because I did exactly the same. I was like, right, I'm good with numbers, you know, and I like IT as well. So I actually did accounting and finance. But I think, you know, if I'd been diagnosed with ADHD sooner, doing something every day, every week, every quarter, right, maybe wouldn't have been the right career for me. And I was lucky enough, I went traveling for a year after university, and I met someone and I was chatting about what I was going to do. And he said, well, why don't you combine, you know, your love of IT and the accounting? I was like, what do you mean? He said, well, you know, there's these ERP systems like SAP or Oracle, and they have to be implemented. And I had no idea. And that's when I then, you know, got into things. That's where I look for those.
And he's never looked back, and I'm glad that you didn't look back, because if he had, I might not have a job.
Well, actually, I mean, interestingly, I was put on more of like a DBA type course. Like, I joined this company, and I actually realized early on that wasn't for me. Again, probably the ADHD side of things. And so I actually made that decision to change early, i.e., I'm not going to stay in this for like 3 or 4 years and then have to change, like, you know, you're mentioning about changing the career and the money changing and everything else. I was like, no, I'm going to change sooner, because because I know I'm a hard worker. If I change in now, I can then rebuild and start. Whereas
You are
if
a
I
hard
change,
worker. I would probably more describe you as adamant. Just generally adamant.
but I
Stubborn?
think it's
A
important.
little, maybe.
Stubborn, that'll go.
But what I
Maybe
would
a
say
little,
is,
a little stubbornness is not bad.
No.
yeah, but what I would say is you got into tax or stumbled into it, but you enjoyed it and you stayed there. And I think that's important for all of the young people listening. Don't just settle for a job if it's not right for you, even if it is tax. And we love tax, and there's such a different variety. Don't just stick at it because it's
You do
pays the
you,
bills.
hun. That's what we say. You do you, hun. But Gina, like we're going to have to start closing this episode down, because like the problem with you, Gina, is that you're so engaging and you're so nice to talk to that we don't want to stop. I do want to ask about your house again, though, because I mentioned it earlier on, and if I don't bring it back up, it's going to look like an editing issue, but that wouldn't be the case. And I'm just sort of Peter, our cameraman, is out of shot at the moment. Tell us about your house. And if you are willing, I will be asking you to share photos, because I think it's amazing.
So we moved to Galveston Island, which is, I live in Texas. So Galveston Island, if you look at a map of Texas, if you take Houston, take 45 straight down till you hit the beach, that's pretty much where I live. And I grew up 30 minutes north of here. So I've always liked old houses. I think they're really cool. The construction's cool. The details they put in, they're just made better, right? So where I live is actually one of the highest concentrations of Victorian homes in the country.
Oh, really?
And we looked around. I know, and old for the U.S. I'm sorry.
No. But I mean, yeah, but
old in the U.S. Not as old as stuff in Europe.
No, but it's a good
our
stat.
house was,
That's what I meant. It's a good stat. Yeah.
It's like, what's the saying?
Yeah.
It's the Americans think 200 years is old. The Europeans think 200 miles is a long way.
Yeah.
Exactly. There you go. That's a really good way to say it. But yeah, absolutely. So our house was built in 1898. So it's only 120 something years old, but for here it's late, right? And when we first got, I'm trying to find a picture if I have one here. We first bought the home, and it was, let's see, how do I share my screen here?
Yeah, because I mean, it was
Without...
pretty all right to begin with, but then Gina has got a stamp that she has placed on this place, and I love it. It's definitely got...
Yeah, I love our house.
Even the room that she's in at the moment is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's good.
It's sort of like oxblood red walls, but all of these, I just call them objets d'art in the background. She's got awards, but you have to point them out because otherwise she won't show you. But she's got awards for just being amazing.
The stuff in the corner over there, it's just 100% club awards for work, and
oh, just that little old
kind of
thing,
stuff.
yeah.
Nothing too fancy. Why isn't? Oh, there it is. This should work now. All right. So let me show you what it originally looked like. I should have pictures of this.
And for anybody listening,
and you can cut all this out, right?
Oh yeah. But for anybody listening that can't obviously see this, you need to get on and at least have a look at some of these photos because they're amazing. This is a controversial question that I'm going to ask you while you're looking for that, Gina.
What?
Who would win out of a fight between Taylor Swift and Beyonce?
Ooh.
Ooh.
Ooh. Is it like, can they bring their sort of like extended posse?
Yeah, they can bring their posse.
Oh. I'm a Houston girl. I'm gonna have to say Beyonce.
I mean, I like both, but yeah. After Texas Hold'em.
She's from Houston, so I'm gonna have to go with Beyonce, I think. Oh my God, this is so hard to find. I don't know what I'm gonna do. Oh, there it is. I just found it. Okay, this is what we're looking for. So, how do I share my screen here?
Little share button at the bottom.
There we go. So this is what the house looked like when we purchased it.
Isn't that gorgeous?
Yeah.
And this is what it looks like now.
Oh, wow.
It's a transformation, isn't it? I think it's like if Slytherin, if Elvira was a Slytherin.
Something like that. Yeah, it's a little bit Slytherin, I would say, even though, I do like that. So yeah, we just want, well,
That's
I'm not
fantastic.
boring.
I'll put the
Like I said, this is too.
I just like.
Oh, and we've even.
Sorry.
What were you gonna say?
I was going to say you must love coming home.
I do, and we just got a new fence too. So this is the old fence right here. We actually replaced it with well, not original to the time period, iron fencing. Like the iron with little gold on top and
Oh,
a nice
really?
new. So it looks more original to the time.
I was going to say because like
it's black with gold on top.
this is like typical white picket fence, but now you've got wrought iron railings by the sound of it.
Yeah.
Exactly. Actually, I
Divine.
can show you what the railings look like.
Oh yeah. I mean that looks very English to me.
Those are the classic.
Actually, in the UK, you can see a lot of places, like older places, where the iron railings have been cut away because in the Second World War they needed the metal to build the guns, the tanks, and everything else. So that was one of the things they did. They just cut down all of the fencing, the railings, and
that would make sense. Interesting, yeah. I've been watching. It's funny. I just watched all of those Band of Brothers, the Pacific, and now the new one, Masters of the Air. It's all World War II stuff. I know. Not something you would think I would be watching, but I find that stuff really interesting. So any little tidbits about that kind of stuff is cool. But yeah, we replaced basically the white fence with iron fencing, the original iron to the time period. We bought it off someone else.
Goodness,
So,
this is
yeah.
a labour of love. Oh, go on, put yours. Take yours. Would you mind stop sharing your screen and we'll get you back on the main.
Yes.
yeah, there we go.
Oh, there she is. Now she's back. Right, another question for you then.
Yes.
What is your biggest ick?
Ick?
Ick.
What is my?
Yeah.
Oh.
The thing that makes you go, ugh. I mean,
This is gonna sound crazy, but a lot of times peanut butter. I'm not
really?
a fan of peanut butter. I don't like peanut butter.
Oh my goodness.
Peanut
I
butter and
thought
celery
I knew
makes me
you,
go,
Gina. No.
No.
butter's
Peanut butter and
amazing.
celery. Peanut butter and celery are my two least favorite combinations of anything, separate or independent to each other. And then seeing anything on TV where people are getting their needles going into skin. I don't know.
Oh, no,
I can't.
see, I love all of
I
that.
can't watch
What?
that.
That's weird. That's horrible.
I can't watch that.
No, my mum's one of those that will scroll through TikTok or Instagram and be watching the pimple poppers and all the rest of it. And I think there's something wrong with her.
That's just gross.
Yeah, that's just that is ick, right? That is
it.
really.
That's
But for
ick.
me, it's more. And I had leukemia in 2013, and I've been poked with a needle I don't know how many times, and I still can't even watch it on TV.
Oh my goodness. So you've had a major kind of health event as well, and you've still done all the stuff that you've done. God, you do continue to inspire. These are moments to overcome, and you're here, and you're studying, and you're doing all of these things. Wow.
It was one of those things where I don't want it to define me, but it's also really interesting because I was diagnosed, but I was lucky. I was the kind of leukemia I had a really high remission rate. I had to go through all the chemo stuff, but the remission rate where it wasn't I didn't know if I was going to live. There's still that doubt in your mind.
Of course.
But, when you're going through that kind of stuff, I'm all, again, like I mentioned before, when you're thrown something, you just put your head down and get over it. I don't need to be self-pitying and, oh, woe is me.
I mean, they don't need to define us, but they are formative experiences. And, invariably, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger because that's now something that you've overcome. Yeah. Oh. Well, I'm glad that you did, and I'm glad that you're here talking to us and sharing all of this with the rest of the listeners and the watchers and all the people. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Right, Gina, it's been such a pleasure, but we're going to wrap it to a close there. Is there anything that you want to say to anybody listening? Do you want to do a shout out? We've done Joy, so you can choose somebody else. Oh, well, you're going away this weekend, aren't you, to New York to celebrate your bestie's birthday, correct?
I never got to show you the invite, so that's the invite for the front, and this is the one I wanted to show you. Look at that. Isn't that gorgeous?
That's awesome.
It's so extra, but I'm living. It's absolutely
So that's
incredible.
the invite for the party. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll make sure that we put it out after the party, so the address and the.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we'll do a shout
Maybe
out.
blurt that out. Yeah.
Do a shout
Yeah,
out to your
that's
bestie
fine.
then.
Happy birthday, Monty. His birthday was on Tuesday.
Oh,
So,
happy birthday.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
I just have to remind you, it's not a radio station. This is a podcast. It's not going out live, but never mind.
Well, it doesn't have to go out live, does it? It's just that you can share
we'll
it
put
next
out-
year.
Yeah,
when
we'll
it's
put it
his
out just before
birthday.
next year.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much, Gina.
Brilliant. Thanks, Jess. Awesome.
You're welcome.